Let's talk about turtles. A lot of people really like turtles, and they are really interesting. And besides, what exactly is a turtle? We all know that they're a reptile, but they're unlike anything else on this planet. Let's focus on two test questions. And the first one is be able to describe the unique characters of turtles. And then secondly, I want you to be able to explain how climate change is affecting the sex ratios of marine sea turtles and the implications for their conservation. To begin, turtles are highly derived reptiles, and in fact, they're so derived, for the longest time, it was difficult to even know who or what they were related to, other than the fact that they are, of course, reptiles. In traditional phylogenetics, if you look at just morphology, well, turtles are what we call anapsids. They lack a fenestra in their skull, and they were often placed as basal to all other reptiles, including the archosaurs and the lepidosaurs. And of course, lepidosaurs are your lizards and snakes, and the archosaurs includes dinosaurs, birds, and crocodilians. Now, in recent years, we've added a lot of molecular phylogeny and realized that the anapsid condition of turtles is not the ancestral condition, it's actually a derived condition. And now we think that turtles are probably basal to the archosaurs, meaning they're more closely related to birds, dinosaurs, and crocodilians than they are to snakes and lizards. And we also think that turtles split from these other groups around the late Carboniferous. We're not exactly sure what led to the evolution of turtles. Initially, there was these expanded ribs, probably gave them some type of protection, because in today's turtles, the ribs are actually connected to their carapace. And by the Triassic, about the time the dinosaurs got started, we see the first turtle fossil. So turtles are an ancient lineage. What makes turtles unique? Of course, they have a carapace and a plastron. The carapace is the hard shell on top, and the plastron is the shell on the bottom, and these are made of dermal bones. The ribs are actually fused to the carapace. So we know that turtles have this unique look. There's a couple other things about them that are pretty wild too. So let's take a look at the plastron. The plastron is the underside, and on top of the plastron, this dermal bone, there are these keratinized scutes. So here's an image of the bottom side of a turtle, also known as the plastron. And you can easily see each one of the scutes, and they all have their different names. Starting with where the head is, those are called the gular scutes. Then you have the humeral, pectoral, abdominal, femoral, and then the anal scutes, all in that order. And then, of course, the top is called the carapace. And the carapace also has scutes. And you start with a nuchal scute, that's right where the head comes out, followed by marginal scutes, and then you've got your central scutes going right down the middle, and then you can see your costal scutes on each side. And some of these scutes can be shed or kept. So a lot of river turtles, they will shed those scutes, whereas terrapins, they will keep them. And if you own one of these turtles, because they're not burrowing underneath the ground, and they'll get this pyramiding on top of them. One really interesting turtle found in North America is a soft-shelled turtle. And soft-shelled turtles, they actually lack the ossification, and they also lack scutes. So they've got a carapace that's basically covered in skin. And interestingly, because it's covered in skin, they can get gas exchange across that skin, which allows them to stay down for a really long time underwater. The circulatory system of turtles is pretty interesting too. Like many other reptiles, including snakes and lizards, they have a 3-chambered heart. Now, so do amphibians, but the difference here is there's an actual pulmonary circuit. And the difference between a reptile or a turtle heart and like a mammal or a bird heart is that there's an incomplete septum in the ventricle. So there's a little bit of mixing of oxygenated, deoxygenated blood, and that can be a little bit limiting to the size and activity of reptiles. Now, the respiration is interesting. You see, in most amniotes, the way we breathe, you breathe in, your lungs expand, and your rib cage expands. That does not happen in turtles because turtles, their ribs are fused to the carapace. So what happens is they have these muscles that move the viscera. That's all the guts, basically, most of the liver. And when they exhale, they contract the muscle, and it pulls basically the liver and other parts of the viscera into the lungs and forces air out. And then when the muscles relax, they fall back down, and that allows the lung to expand. And when the lung expands, it pulls in air. So remember, turtles are breathing without moving their ribs, which is unlike any other amniote. Now, turtles also do something else really odd. All right, I'm trying to say that halfway technically. Turtles can have respiration turtles can breathe through their butts. That is true. Okay, so turtles can go down for a really long time and they can bring water in through their cloaca, and there's a chamber in there, and they can actually get gas exchange across that chamber. So there you have it. Turtles do butt breathing. Here's some other interesting things about turtles. They are long-lived. And they're not the longest lived vertebrate. Of course, that goes to the Greenland shark that can live over 400 years. But we know that some tortoises can live over 188 years. And closer to home, our native box turtles might live over 50 years. Now, we all know the story that reptiles are ectothermic. That means that their body temperature is typically the temperature of the environment around them, because they don't generate any body heat through metabolism. Oh, that's the story, right? Well, it turns out that sea turtles can be slightly endothermic. And they do this in a couple different ways, but one of them is just they're really big, so they can hold on to a lot of heat. And through constant swimming, they generate a lot of heat too. And they only spend about 1% of their time of the day resting. They can actually be warmer than their environment around them. And that's really important because they can be found in waters that are much too cold for other types of sea turtles. Let's talk about turtle reproduction because this is important. Now, turtles are amniotes. That means they cannot lay eggs in water. That's because amniotes lack a larval stage with gills. So we have these marine sea turtles, and they have to migrate long distances to come back to shores to lay their eggs. And they do that along the beaches of the world. Now, here's another way that turtles are very different than you and I. They have temperature-dependent sex determination. All right, let me explain that. In you and I, in mammals, our sex is determined by our genes. If you're a human and you're XX, you're female. If you're XY, you're a male. But in turtles, the temperature determines the sex. That's really wild, isn't it? It's called temperature-dependent sex determination. There's 3 basic types. Type 1, if you have higher temps, that produces all males, and lower temps produces females. The exact opposite of that is type 2, where high temps produce females and low temps produce males. And there's also a type 3 as well, where one sex is more frequent at either high or low temps. So you can imagine that at higher temps and at lower temps, you get almost all males, and at the in-between temperatures, you get mostly females. When it comes to green sea turtles, they have temperature-dependent sex determination. And this is a problem in global climate change. So in a lot of areas, the world is warming up. And what that's doing is it's causing entire populations of sea turtles to be all one sex. And in the case of the green sea turtle, like 99% of them in certain parts of the world are being hatched, and they're all female. So not only do sea turtles face problems from people collecting their eggs and eating them, from people liking to go to the beach where they to nest and building on the beaches and affecting their nesting is there. Not only do they face problems with overfishing, longlining, getting caught in trawling nets, now they've got to worry about the effects of climate change, skewing their populations to be all of one sex. And that's a real problem because, 99 females out of every 100 and only one male. Well, the problem is that one male might only find 1 or 2 females, and that's it. So green sea turtles and sea turtles in general, in fact, 6 out of the 7 species are critically endangered. Well, I hate to end on such a bad note about sea turtles. You know, sea turtles and other turtles have been around for over 220 million years. And so within this last 100 years or so, they have really been hammered. And I hope that we don't drive them to extinction. But in the meantime, I hope you learned something fun about turtles today, and look forward to my next video.